All right, so let's talk about gay stuff.
Let's talk about gay stuff.
All right. Welcome.
Oh, shoot.
Oh.
It'll soon be released.
This
on
was your
iTunes.
homework for the week. You were supposed to
I'm going to be dropping it in the next few weeks.
You are so dramatic.
Don't drop it.
Be looking out for that.
Well, that's
He's like Madonna, where she's like, "Oh, the concert's at 9, but I'll actually get on stage at like 12:30."
Oh, we went to that.
Yeah. Did you go to that, Tony?
Yeah, I've seen her 2 or 3 times.
Oh,
yeah,
you are
and every
gay.
time it's
Despite us thinking you're.
Here's
a
my
lesbian,
Madonna
you're a gay.
story.
Oh yes, I am gay.
About her concert. So my sister, let's see, my parents could not stand Madonna because of that video of the burning crosses. And when that came out, my sister and I used to watch MTV, and we would like turn it off real quick when they walked in the door. And you're like, you better not be watching MTV with that Madonna on there. Fast forward 20 years, and he buys me for Christmas and Thomas Madonna tickets to go
nice.
see her, and I'm like,
He forgot.
yeah, we've come a long way.
We
Yeah.
have come a long way, which is part of what we talk about on this podcast. How far we've come. We discussed the week in gay history. I like how we just kind of leapt into it. So, yeah, we discussed the week in gay history. So this week we're talking about the last week in June. So June 23rd through the 29th, which is a big week because a lot of stuff happens that week. It's big Pride week, right, for like New York City, San Francisco, Houston. The world. And so it's a big Pride event. And so we'll talk a little bit about kind of how that started in terms of the origins of the Pride celebration with Stonewall and the first Pride parade in New York City. But it's also a big week because this is when the Supreme Court, speaking of dropping things, that's when they dropped some big decisions. And so some major court cases in the past 50 years or so have been decided by the Supreme Court that have impacted the LGBT community, and we'll talk about one of those, Lawrence v. Texas, today. So, it sounds like the mimosas are in full swing. We started today with a nice brunch, courtesy of Spencer.
Yes.
Thanks, and Tony for providing some sweets. Basically, he's dipped his finger in the food, and it was sweet.
Yes. Yeah. Thomas was like, I was like, "What are we snacking on today?" So I can bring something. He's like, "Bring something sweet." I'm like, "I'm already coming." I was
Hey.
talking about the food.
The jokes. He's so sweet. What a dad joke. I make those jokes all the time.
Thank you. Can we edit this out, please?
And
Just kidding.
Spencer looks at me like, "That's not funny." I'm like, "Dope." So yeah, it was quite a week. This week flew by. Felt like long, but it kind of flew.
Hashtag me too.
But it was
Flew
long.
by. Yeah.
But yeah, hashtag me too. On that note, you're the one who told me hashtag, because I told this to someone the other day. They sent me. We were joking about
The
something,
pound sign.
and he said, "Yeah, hashtag me too." I said, that in our day it used to be called the pound sign, and so if you
Pound me too.
yeah.
Oh, that's what I refer to.
The
as.
Pound Me Too
Yes.
movement.
Yes.
Pound Me Too movement, which
That's why we
They didn't
always
think that through
hashtag
very
pound me
much.
too. It's not hashtag me
Yeah.
too. When we post about this
It's
podcast.
asking
it's pound
to
me
be
too.
pounded.
That's my
Wow.
personal tagline on dating sites.
like-
I'm like,
that's your-
pound me too.
That's your grinder.
They're like, are you a feminist with hashtag me too? I'm like, no, it's pound me too.
That's
Thank
just grinder, bitch.
you. Yes.
Pound me twice.
Yes.
Other than the week kind of flew by, Kendall, anything exciting happened this week for you?
I quit my job.
Oh,
Took a lot of naps.
new chapters.
I have no job to get in the way of my naps
Oh, that's good.
or my binge watching.
Well, actually, that kind of makes sense because you quit your job, so you had nothing to do, and that's why you were doing all your research last minute for this podcast today.
That wasn't research.
I would
I
say
was
this.
drawing penises.
Like, I'm the same way. Like, I was off work for a month and a half a couple months ago, and same. I was like, I'm way less efficient and way less effective when I'm completely off versus like when you're working and have shit to do. You don't have time to.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough thing. Like, I run my own business, and so it's like trying to get your schedule organized. Like, I saw some of my old coworkers the other day, and they were, they're like, "Oh, you look good. Like, you look like you're in good shape." I'm like, "No, I hardly work out." It's because now my schedule is like, I mean, I try to have a consistent schedule, but if there's no meeting that's pressing, you're kind of in the back of your head like, "Do I really need to wake up that early?" Versus when you're working the 9 to 5 or the 8 to 7, whatever. You have to get up early in the morning so you get your workout in because you never know how the day's going to go.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I'm still working on that part, getting the
I'm
workout
still
in.
waiting to get that workout.
Me too.
What I'm trying to figure out is if you don't have a job, how do you know when to shower?
Well, you don't have to.
Oh,
And
you don't have to anymore?
Some people are into that.
Oh, that's what that smell is.
I'm
Yeah.
getting so much more nap time in now.
We need to save
Cut that
money.
shower
You can't
out.
afford soap now.
So this this week then, Kendall, has been kind of your off week. You're shaking off all of the old job vibe.
Yeah.
So you said you were binging. What are you binging on besides food?
We're talking about TV.
Mostly Whataburger, but if we're talking about TV, there's not. Chernobyl right now.
What's hot these days? Oh,
Chernobyl, yeah.
Oh, I've heard somebody was talking about this
It's
at
okay.
work.
Our Spoopy podcast was they're releasing an episode tomorrow, Sunday, or rather they've released
I'm
an
gonna check
episode
that out.
on Chernobyl. So yep.
Cool.
It's fascinating, but every time I watch it, I go down the Wikipedia rabbit hole of like, is this true? And then you just clicking.
Yeah.
And then before you know it, you're on like
That's why I hate like drama.
Muffin
I
recipes
love
or-
like documentaries. I hate like drama.
Right, I wanna know if
because
it's
then
true or not.
I don't know what's true and what's not. Yeah, exactly.
like, did he really have that haircut? I need to know.
Well, of course that stuff's always accurate. Duh.
Yes.
The costuming, stuff like
The
that.
perms.
But
Yes.
yeah, it's crazy because now with with the internet, you've got all this. I mean, I sound like an old man saying
Exactly.
it, but because I was looking something up for our podcast today, and I couldn't find like the what I was looking for. I was looking for like an old newspaper article. Of course, if you want an old newspaper article, you have
Right.
to look. You have to pay, and I'm like, okay, I like this podcast, but I'm not paying for that, right? But like back in the day, you had to go to the
Can't afford to
library.
anymore.
And you
Oh,
have
the
to-
microfiche.
Yeah, the microfiche.
Yeah,
yes,
I agree.
Which I
Oh,
guess
is that why you were going to the library?
Yeah, well,
Mhm.
cruising, you know.
Yes.
We'll talk a little bit. I guess that's a part of the Lawrence v. Texas case we'll discuss later. But yeah, I mean, you'd have to go to the library and do the microfiche. And I was actually tempted not. I'm somewhat like in my mind. I'm like, I want to go to the library to see some of these because for today, like when I talk about the Pride Parade, I pulled up an article from the New York Times from the day after, right? They were
Oh,
reporting
yeah.
on the event, which was really cool. And so, but you can't get that in like all the time. So I'm gonna have to make trips to the library to do research.
That
A
research.
research.
Hands-on
Let me do the
research.
research.
And
I'll go to the CD library.
I want. There's a lot of homeless people there.
We should
I'm sure.
research together.
Beggars can't be choosers. I'll take what I can get. I'm not getting any younger here.
Found me too.
Me too. There's lots of homeless. You have a special place in your heart for homeless people, Kendall, because didn't you say you were recently provided an opportunity to view a homeless man's junk?
Woof. What happened?
Oh. We were walking back here from a restaurant, and some guy I thought was being rude because he was staring at me up and down, which I get a lot. But yeah.
But normally they're like,
And then I sit in the car, and he knocks on the window and pulls down his pants, and it was huge.
did you
like-
touch it?
No.
Because you got a boyfriend.
Ben was in the car with me.
Ben's like, touch it.
Because all the
Touch
guys-
It was just billowing in the wind.
Oh,
It
wow.
was like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
I
flopping.
feel like that happens a lot too. Like that's never happened to me, but you always have not always, but often have a story like, nope, that guy just showed his junk to me.
Oh, I have a similar
Yeah.
story.
Well, people drop their pants when they see me typically.
So I ride my bike to work. One time I was leaving the office and it was dark. So, and I had to ride around like that park where Allen Parkway meets downtown, and it's kind of curvy. So I'm riding my bike home, and I see these two homeless people. This lady sitting on the bench, and this guy standing above her, and he's about to like unzip his pants, take his pants down. And so as I'm riding by them on my bike, I'm looking and looking back, and I'm like, oh my God, what's going on? And then I turn around and smash into the fence because I was like, and so they started laughing at me because they're like,
Homeless people were like,
yeah, they're like, that's what you get for watching us do our blowjob.
they pitied you.
I know. No, they're just, yeah.
That's good. I like that story.
Yeah.
Thank you for that one.
I thought you were going to talk about the time. I thought you were prompting me to talk about the time I accidentally had sex with a homeless person.
Oh, what? Accidentally? How does this happen? What story, please?
But you have a history of that because go ahead. Yeah, tell your story.
Short story is that I realized he was home. I had clues he was homeless, but the next day he wouldn't leave, and I was like, "Where can I Uber you to?" And he was like, "Nowhere." I said, "Well, can I pick a place?" So I picked the McDonald's in Montrose
Oh, no.
because he was homeless
How did you meet this guy?
on the street.
Leaving the bar. But you have
And then the only other time I went to that McDonald's ever, he was there eating there.
What? Did you talk to him?
I was gonna say,
No.
was he working there? Because that was good. That's progress. But no, he was eating.
Nope,
there.
still
Well,
homeless.
Well, at least someone was paying for that meal. That's
Yeah.
good. Yeah. So, but you said a story when you were a flight attendant. You said you saw some homeless guy. You're like, you want to.
All right, let's not make me tell these
Okay,
terrible stories.
I feel like we try to limit this podcast to an hour, and if we talk about all Kendall's sex stories with homeless people,
Oh, don't worry. We've got plenty of time.
that's like we should have one per episode because
But that was quick. Like what
we
happened
ain't got
there?
time for all this.
What happened in that story?
I don't remember that.
Oh, you've told it. You were like in D.C. You tell this story because we would pass by it in DuPont Circle. He was like,
yeah.
Oh, that story.
And he turned me down. This homeless guy had standards.
that's
He's
good.
like, I'm desperate. I ain't that desperate.
Living that
All right.
homeless life.
Oh my gosh.
That'll be
Okay.
me in a few weeks.
Tony, anything happened for you this week?
Nothing major.
Nothing major.
Same. Yeah.
All right. Well, good. I mean, we seem to be in lively spirits. I guess it's the mimosas flowing because we went to a party last night and it was fun. A little hungover today. That run that I did this morning was not fun. I blame it on the Houston heat and humidity, but
I remember at the party falling asleep on the couch.
you did.
Yes.
And then waking up and people looking at me like, you can't do that here.
You're the old guy that was sleeping at the party.
Who said that?
No, they were looking
Tony,
at me like,
fuck
was
them.
it was you.
It was you.
No, I remember everything about it. I was pacing myself.
You
I
actually
was-
stayed out late. I
I
was
was just
you were-
taking a
Oh,
nap.
I know. Yeah,
I don't have a
yeah.
job. I can take naps.
Yeah, that's it.
Exactly.
Wow.
One time I had a first date, and red wine makes me sleepy, so I had one glass of red wine, and then I woke up while he was cooking dinner. I had gone into his room and took a nap,
Oh my God. How long did
and
you
he
date
woke
him?
me up and was like, "Dinner's ready." I'm like, "How long have I been out?" And this was a first date. There was not a second date.
I was gonna say,
I bet.
and Ben's such a nice guy. It wasn't Ben. I could see Ben
No.
doing something like that though. Yeah. So anything? Remember the party though. Interesting note on the party. It was he gave himself a roast. It was like he was advertising all week. He wanted people to roast him, and he roasted himself.
Yeah.
Did a good job.
Roasted
of
us,
roasting.
which was fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which was fun.
All in good humor.
Yeah,
It was good.
It was fun. It was good. And then there was a lip sync battle.
I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah. Spencer
I was
would.
Our
thinking right
intern did amazing in the lip sync
Yeah.
battle.
He wouldn't get
Lip
off.
sync.
He wouldn't get off the stage.
The
so
lip
to speak.
sync.
But he was living for it.
Thank you. Okay.
Which I think
Why didn't y'all wake me up for that?
I think
How could you miss it?
It's right in front of you, and I did wake you up and tell you to perform, and he said,
And I said, "Shh." People
He's
are
like, I
said, people are
perform, but
sleeping here."
not lip sync.
he wore himself out though, because he didn't wake up till really late this morning. So I think he was a little tired.
I would
from
say you were the
all the
star
flips.
of the lip sync battle. You did every song.
There you go. You did every song.
Yeah.
I would have done it, but I didn't like the song you picked. It was like,
You could have picked your own. Yeah.
It wasn't.
Spencer wasn't dictating
You-
the.
It was
you
off
challenged
YouTube.
me and you picked the song. And it was like some death metal, Metallica,
Yeah.
lesbian wedding song.
Things that Spencer does. No, those are words. It's like you might as well be
I think
talking
it was
about
Evanescence.
like rocket science, because he doesn't know what you're talking about with death metal. So.
Well.
All right.
Carly Rae Jepsen, though.
There.
Oh, there was a
probably
little too much of that. I was
There
like,
was there's. Yeah, he's Canadian. That's always that. And
oh, I
Celine-
like her, but I feel like
There was
a little
bit,
variety would
yeah,
have been nice.
That and Celine Dion. But yes, so but good week, and here we are recording
Yes.
our new episode. So let's talk about gay stuff.
Let's talk about gay stuff.
All right, I think we're gonna have to record that, and you're gonna be the jingle for that.
Ew, I
Tony.
need all the publicity I can get.
There we go.
Thank you.
We're trying to get you.
I'll bring a
boyfriend on
tambourine.
this. There we go.
Yay.
Nice.
So,
So Tony, lead us off.
yes. Okay. So, this week in 2003 was when Lawrence versus Texas was decided by the Supreme Court. And so, sure, most of our listeners know what that is. But for those that don't, that was the Supreme Court decision that made Texas's sodomy law unconstitutional. And basically, I mean, historically, all states at some point had sodomy laws. But when this case went through the courts, there were still 13 states where consenting adults, privacy of their own home, no booty action. It's illegal. So, and then there were actually like a dozen cases a year where people like would get arrested and fined and everything. So, the story's very interesting. I feel a lot of our listeners are probably Houstonians, and so it actually originated in Houston. And there's a lot of like small moving parts that if all of this hadn't fallen into place, it may not have ever went to the court. So basically, this guy had an apartment in East Houston, and he invited his friend and his friend's boyfriend over for some drinks one night. So he and this guy had been friends for about 20 years, and the boyfriend was kind of like new to the picture, so he didn't really like this, this guy and his friendship, whatever. So they're all hanging out, having a few drinks, and the boyfriend is kind of like, I fucking hate this guy, kind of jealous. He's like, I think he might be flirting with my boyfriend. So he's like, I'm going to run to the vending machine and get a soda. So he goes down, calls the cops, and says, hey, there's a maniac waving a gun in this apartment. Like, there's this domestic dispute. Need to get here right away. So there was this cop who had just gotten off duty, but he was in the area, and he had a history with HPD of being pretty rough with people he was arresting. He was investigated a few times, put on leave a few times. So he hauls ass to the apartment, busts the door down, and these two guys are kind of just sitting on the couch, hanging out. And he said they were having gay sex, anal sex. And his story was, as soon as he busted the door down, that they kind of looked at him and smirked and started going at it harder just to prove they could have anal sex. And so, yeah, their stance was, we were sitting there watching
Their
TV.
stance was doggy.
Yeah, I was
Yes.
about to say, was it missionary? Was it
And
doggy?
they're like, if this cop busts down our door waving a gun in our face, how could we like continue having an erection and having gay sex? So they get arrested and next day get out of jail. And so when the
Can we pause there?
Yes.
Though? Like their logic, is like, well, I couldn't be, how could I still maintain an erection? Like, is that? I don't know. If you're in the act, like all of a sudden.
But if a cop busts down your door and
Oh,
is waving a gun in your face and is like, what the fuck's going on here? Because he didn't know there wasn't a guy somewhere else with the gun. He thought there's a guy in this apartment with a gun. So
maybe they were.
But you had
into
to have a
that.
warrant anyway.
he didn't. He had a history of.
Right. So if you are having sex and a cop busts in, you don't have to stop.
Well, his point, when their argument was like, how do you know that? What? How would I logically be continuing to have sex if a cop's bust
Yeah,
in?
because they
And
were
I'm
just
like,
trying
Right,
to
but
say,
I'm saying
yeah.
the whole premise was unjustified.
Well, that
Like-
Oh, yeah.
it was never brought up in the cases though.
But
It
I'm
was
saying
never-
that if the cop is like, and they didn't stop having sex, well, I don't have to. You're in my
Yeah.
apartment. Thank
Well, no,
you.
no,
But
that was the logic
the
of
fact
the
that they were
defendants.
having anal sex was illegal.
Right.
So
But
yeah.
the defendants were saying, how could we have been having?
Well, so
sex?
here's what
Right.
typically happens. So, like anytime somebody was charged with sodomy, the process is they get arrested, they go to the justice of the peace, and they get the minimum fine, pay it, and it's done. And so none of it ever went to the courts. Like people would just pay the fine, and that kind of sucks. So what happened in this case? The guys were arrested. They get out of jail the next day, and they fax over this case to the justice of the peace. And the clerk for the JP, he's gay, and so he reads this and he's like, "Oh my god, this is crazy."
All clerks are.
So he and his boyfriend go to JR's, which is our local gay bar,
I feel like they need to become a sponsor as much as we mentioned that.
and have so they have a few drinks, and he tells the bartender, he's like, "Oh, you won't believe what came across my desk today." Tells him about the case, and the bartender was
Came
actually
across his chest.
his desk.
Oh, okay.
No,
Yes.
because it was anal. It was
Yes, yeah. No, that was you last night at the party. Just kidding.
Whoa, what part of the?
That was during
you
my
guys,
blackout.
You guys were upstairs for a while, so I was just. No, I'm kidding.
So the bartender was actually a gay rights activist, and so he knew that the gay community was looking for an ideal case to try to overturn these laws. And so a light switch went off in his head. As soon as he finished his shift, he started calling all of these other politicos that he knew. They called Lambda Legal, and they immediately said, "We're on our way to Houston. We want to take this case." They had to actually convince the guy who was arrested to don't just pay the $100 fine and go through, forget about it. Because he seemed like the type that didn't want a lot of publicity. I think he personally didn't want to fight because it went through the courts for 6 years, before it was decided. And so they convinced him to plead innocent and fight this all the way to the Supreme Court. And another wrinkle in the case was, because typically the JP would say the minimum fine's $100, pay the $100 and you're done. So the JP fined him $100 and he said, "I'm not going to pay it. I'm going to fight it." And then Lambda Legal actually had to go back to the JP and say, can you please increase the fine? Because the Supreme Court will not hear a case if the dollar value damages is less than a certain amount.
Mm-hmm.
And so when it went to the very first court, so the judge said, no, this guy, they were having anal sex, so, I'm ruling for the state or whatever. And so Lambda Legal had to ask the judge, will you please impose a fine for this? And so he did. He agreed to like a $200 fine or whatever. And so it's kind of interesting because, for the entire case, if it wasn't for all of these small things, like if that JP clerk decided, oh, let's not go to the bar tonight, or if they had a different bartender. And then even these judges, like, they knew what Lambda Legal was trying to do. And so even though they were interpreting the law, a certain way, they were also supportive because they could have been like, I'm not going to impose any fines, and then that roadblocks you from getting to the Supreme Court. So
Cockblocks you in this case.
Yes.
Uh-oh.
But yeah, so that's kind of like the actual case and what happened, and then it went through the courts and got overturned. But I just thought it was interesting, especially for people in Houston. And actually, the bartender, when I first moved here, I got involved with some young gay political groups, and so I actually met him through that. But
Lauren?
No, the
Oh,
bartender that was he was instrumental, really. I mean, if he wouldn't have that like Mr. Lawrence would have paid the $100 fine and went about his way. I mean, he was not a fighter.
He was like
Is he still there?
He was like
the bartender? No.
No, he does other stuff now, but he's
Lawrence-
still
Celebrity.
very involved in politics.
But he was like X-ray tech, right? I mean, he wasn't
Yes,
like
yeah, no,
he
yeah,
was just
exactly.
kind of he wasn't.
And he lived, in East Houston in this apartment. So he was in his 50s, had this little apartment in East Texas or East Houston. Yeah, I mean, he would have, because he was released the next day, and he would have went to whenever he had to appear, paid the $100, and that's what happened. So there were, you would think like, okay, did they really enforce this law? But no, there were about a dozen cases a year in Texas where people got arrested for sodomy, and they had to, and it was, spend a night in jail, pay $100, you're done. But they just dealt with it because they were like, I don't want to.
That was in 2003?
So actually it happened in like 98 or 99, but the Supreme Court decision was released in 03. So that's the thing, he had to go through 5 or 6 years of court battles, and they Lambda Legal paid for it, but he still had to deal with the publicity and like.
Well, here's the scary part. Okay. In about 2012, I was reading an article in Baton Rouge where the sheriff had people arrested cruising, like gay men cruising in public restrooms, and they were charged with sodomy, like the old sodomy law. This is in 2012, and the DA wouldn't enforce it. The DA wouldn't prosecute or anything like that.
But they would still arrest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, of course, nothing ever really becomes of it, but their name's in the newspaper.
Yeah.
They have an
Well,
arrest
I would
record.
imagine
They have
that-
a record.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe, like, I don't know if that would also put them on, like, a sex offender list. But, I mean, if that happens, you're on there for life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so in this case, it's interesting because that cop who was off duty took it upon himself. I'm close. I'm just going to go there. And I honestly think, so there were 3 other cops that showed up. 2 of them said nothing was going on. And the other one said, well, I think they were doing some oral sex. But since he was the first one there, it was his decision on what gets written up
Well,
in the
thank you
police
to
report.
that cop.
But
Yeah.
But they weren't even having sex, right?
They weren't. But I honestly, because he had a history of being really rough with people he's
Yeah.
arresting, he was investigated, he was like on leave several times. I think he got there and there was nothing going on, and he thought, I need some, like, fuck this, I need some action. I'm going to say these guys were having, I don't know if he could tell they were gay because they were sitting too close together or whatever. But
So what was the lawsuit? What was the grounds for the lawsuit? Like, I'm suing the government because...
Well, see, that's the thing. So his thing was, I didn't do this, but I don't know how that, because the lawsuit was technically like, this is the privacy of their own home. It's it's an invasion of privacy. This law is like an invasion of privacy. It's like not like they're doing it in public.
Yeah, it was a privacy issue. I mean,
Yeah,
this is
so,
why-
but I don't.
Right, but how does that turn into
I don't know.
making sodomy illegal?
well, because it's
legal.
Yeah,
Gay
and
sex
that's the thing.
legal.
I don't know because
Or anal sex
so
legal.
the because the bartender,
Anal.
he basically, and I don't know what the criteria was, but the gay community wanted like an ideal case that they knew would get to the Supreme Court and like cut and dry overturn these laws. And so I don't know what exactly made this like the case that they wanted. If it was like they were obviously not having sex, there was like 2 police officers that said they were having nothing, and one said, well, they were having oral, which that's fine.
But they had to be arguing the sense that the sex act, even though they didn't have sex, and the
Right.
guy who made the call admitted that he was lying later. Like they were still debating this act of sex, right? And because it wasn't the guy, right? It was Lambda. Like it was big political organizations that were supporting this case.
It had to be about the legality of
it was privacy
2
issue.
men having. No, I don't think it.
It was.
That's what it goes back
Yeah.
to. Griswold was cited in that, and the reason I know that is because we.
But how does that lead to sex between men being deemed as constitutional right?
Because it's like in the privacy of your own home, like it shouldn't be policed, basically.
Oh, okay.
2 consenting adults.
Yeah.
It's a privacy issue.
Consenting adults in your own home. It's
So
Yeah.
Like I said, the Griswold case was,
and
on
maybe,
that.
and I don't know, I'm not a legal person at all, but maybe the reason that this was the ideal case is that the 2 guys admitted, and the boyfriend, he probably under interrogation said, no, I made it all up, everything. I just didn't like this guy. And they were, because what the lead cop said, well, I made them put their clothes on by the time the other cops got there. And so with 3 out of 4 police saying there was no anal sex, and the boyfriend admitting it was a lie, and those 2 saying maybe it's like, okay, these 2 did not commit this crime. And then they also, maybe it was multiple grounds. It was they sued that he is innocent, so it will get through the courts. And then we can also add on this privacy issue. I don't know, but...
Well, I mean, that was that was their argument. It was a privacy issue, saying, "Hey, it's 2 consenting adults.
Yeah.
These laws are antiquated."
Yeah. And so maybe every case before that, they were actually in the act. I don't know how you would get caught, but there were, like, as I said, about a dozen a year where people would get arrested.
But there weren't a lot of, I mean, other than Texas, like the laws were on the books in a lot of states, but they weren't really enforced. Like there were rare cases. I mean, like you said, 12 cases. I mean, and I would argue that there were more than 12 gay guys having sex.
Oh yeah.
So my point is they used it arbitrarily, right? And
exactly.
And the fines were so minimal, like most people didn't want to do it. But you
Exactly.
described, I mean, the whole thing, so I love this case though, just in how you described it too, because it's so nuanced and it's built on so many. One, the guy lied. 2, the police officers lied. But then the case went on merits of a lie, right? I mean, they took this whole act of gay sex, of sodomy, which never occurred, but they used that as the basis to go fight this law, right?
Yeah.
And it only came to light because, like you said, the clerk went to the bar, just kikiing with his
and
buddies.
he honestly, and so he and his boyfriend, they would go to JR's all the time, and they really knew the bartender, and that's why it's like he was saying, "Oh, guess what came across my desk this week?" And it was, whereas if they didn't go to JR's all the time, or they had a different bartender, he may not have shared it, or that bartender may not have cared. It's like everything had to fall into place.
Or it went to a different clerk's desk.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
All these sorts of things that were just like, so, and then the pushing of the fine to make it go over.
And so they had to go back. If that original JP said, nope, I'm leaving it at $100, they never would have met the threshold. And so he increased it to what he could, and then the next court had to also impose. So you basically had to have 2 judges that were sympathetic to, I'll kind of help you out. And I mean, I'm assuming this is like, I know nothing about legal, but they did like have to specifically request, we need you to impose fines so we meet this.
It was God's will, huh? Who says God doesn't love the gays?
Right. It touches on so many issues: religion, privacy.
It kind of reminds me too of, as I said, so Mr. Lawrence, he probably would have never fought this, as most people historically hadn't. And it kind of is like, reminds you of like Rosa Parks, where every black person was just like, okay, here's my seat. And she was like, fuck this. I know it's just a bus seat, but no, I'm not going to do this today.
Yeah.
And
she was told to do that. That was planned out too.
Right.
Oh, it was?
Yeah. She worked for the local NAACP, and they had planned the entire time to have someone challenge. She was the one chosen to do that and volunteered to do it, to intentionally go on the bus and say, I'm not moving my seat.
Good for her.
I mean, it's the way these narratives come out, right? It's like these poor people. They come up and go through these trials, but they're backed by these big,
Yeah.
organizations, political organizations that are kind of.
And I mean, I guess too, if that is the case, like, good for her, because how many people would have said, I'm not going to have people trying to burn down my house over starting this bus ride, or I'm not going to have my kids get beat up, and so it was very courageous of her, even though she was.
Yeah, still courageous. I wish that bartender still worked at JR's, because that would be a fun history lesson. Because
well, we went to Stonewall.
I was going to say, on switching topics, like we were going to talk about
that later.
Stonewall. Like that bartender was, I don't know if he's still working there, but he
No
has
way.
Tree. His name is Tree. Yeah, he's been working there. So
That's awesome.
Anything else on Lawrence B. Texas?
No, that was it. Yeah,
All right,
but
well,
I just thought it was very interesting, and for a lot of our listeners who live in Houston, I feel it's
it's
very
a great
cool.
story.
Yeah.
Awesome. Of course, we'd like to thank our sponsor, Economy Works, a freelance talent network that connects professionals with project work. If you're a company that needs help with writing job descriptions, conducting market analysis, or managing your social media platforms, Economy Works has an extensive talent network of freelance professionals ready to help you do more with less. Economy Works. When we work, the economy works.
Speaking of violence and rights, what happened?
No. Okay, so it's June, and for a lot of people, if you're gay especially, June is Pride Month. Woo! Okay, first I have a question for you, Mr. Sir.
Yes.
Montana.
Yeah.
Is there any kind of pride? Were you conscious of pride?
So, no. Like, in Montana, like, growing up, there were no pride celebrations. I mean, it was, actually, so, this restaurant where I worked, it was kind of like everything was out in the open, and this guy had worked there
Except your
for...
sexuality.
Yes. This guy had worked there for a long time. He was, like, a super hard worker. Everybody loved him, the customers, the employees, whatever. And he was married and everything, and then it... Like, I can't remember. He basically got found out that he was gay, and I don't know if he like was having an affair with somebody or just decided to like, okay, I'm gonna be gay. But he basically, it was an unwritten rule. Like I remember talking to the boss, and she said, "Oh, we can't have that here." Like it was just like he didn't even ask for his job back. I mean, he like when he came out, she's like, "We cannot have a gay person working here." But now it's interesting. So they have Big Sky Pride, and it rotates because Montana is only 1 million people.
Yet they have
So-
2 electoral college votes or 3 electoral college votes. Yeah.
So
Okay.
it rotates
Two
to a different city every year. So they have Big Sky Pride, and it basically rotates each year to one of the bigger cities. So I can't remember where it is this year, but now they do have Pride. But it has to rotate.
So was that coworker of yours? Was that the genesis for Brokeback Mountain? Was that in Montana? No.
That was Wyoming.
Oh,
Thank you.
sorry.
A lot of people confuse the two.
No, I think
Okay,
that's
well,
it.
the reason I ask is because Stonewall had a huge impact on every right we have as gay people. It was kind of like it started it all. So on June 28th, 1969, in the Greenwich Village of Manhattan.
69. Woo.
Okay, appropriate. It's like they waited
Yes,
until
they
1969.
planned it. See, they planned it.
Another planning. Those gays know how to plan, huh?
At Stonewall, which was Stonewall Inn, which was kind of the gay bar of New York. It was the only gay bar in New York where you could dance. The rest were just like little shady speakeasy type places.
Can we go just a quick aside on that? Remember when we moved to Virginia and outside of DC?
I don't know
And-
what's an aside. and
but-
what's final recording.
But DC, they when we moved there in 2009, they had these these laws that you couldn't dance. Remember, because you were always trying to dance when the music was playing.
In New York?
No, in
In
DC.
New York, too, you had to have a
And
cabaret
so
license.
it's like you couldn't dance.
Till
So
recently.
one time you started dancing like you do, and they touched you on the shoulder and said, "Sir, we can't dance here. We don't have a license."
And then I said, I'm not dancing. I'm having a seizure. Call the police.
You
Called
did-
911.
You did say
Was
that.
this fucking footloose or what? You can't,
This was in 2009 in DC.
2009?
Yes,
What do you mean?
2009.
I thought we weren't recording.
Yes, we're recording. Yeah.
Okay, so at the Stonewall Inn, which was the kind of gay bar in New York, it was mafia owned because no one wanted to give a liquor license to a gay bar. So they had to do this kind of like mafia owned, we don't have a liquor license, we'll sell you beer, blah, blah, blah. So they would get raided a lot by cops. And the cops were raiding it because the gays frequented it a lot, much like they do in public parks and libraries.
And they just accepted that as like a normal thing, huh? like the raids, they were like, oh, this is just part of like.
Yeah, they
going
happen
out.
at least once a month.
Right.
They happen all the time. Most of the people there were used to the raids. But on this night, June 28th, they had enough. They were sick of the raids. And normally they had gotten tipped off. Like, we know the cops are coming. Somehow I don't know how they knew. But this night, it was completely unexpected. And normally it's early in the night. This time it was after 1 a.m. So the cops came in, and people were pissed. And in the past, it was standard procedure for female cops to take people who are dressed as women into the bathroom to verify if they're a woman or not.
Oh, wow. That's like degrading.
So the drag queens were like, nope, tonight I'm not going to the bathroom. And then people refused to give their IDs, which was required during every police raid. So there was already some tension there. So they were not cooperating with the police. They were rushed outside. No one would let them leave unless they were being arrested. And the gays just had enough. One gay, my favorite quote from that night is, "My biggest fear is that I would get arrested. My second biggest fear is that I'd be on television in my mother's dress." So most of the people being arrested were, to use the term at the time, transvestites. And because they had the most to lose, like, you're getting arrested in a dress in 1969. They were the ones that pretty much started the Stonewall riots because they were like, I ain't getting in that paddy wagon. Shit. So they were trying to arrest them because they weren't paid off. Some of the gays started screaming, well, let's pay them off, and started throwing quarters at them. So that kind of started the whole tense, you're throwing quarters at cops and pennies and all that kind of stuff.
The homeless people must have been raking up that night, just like, going picking all those pennies.
Okay.
And coins. Oh.
But what really started us off is the gays formed a chorus line as they were like taunting the cops and started like doing high kicks and making fun of the situation, which as gays often do.
Yeah.
And they started singing, I don't know how they recorded this, but this is the song apparently. They started singing, "We are the Stonewall girls. We wear our hair in curls. We don't wear underwear. We show our pubic hair."
Oh, my.
And then that really pissed off the cops, so they started attacking these gays in the chorus line. And people were like, "You're attacking us. Like, we're trying to make light of a terrible situation. Like, this is our life." And all hell broke loose. And it was like, they started trying to turn over the cop car, and they started hitting the cops back. The cops felt so threatened that they went back into Stonewall and barricaded themselves in. And the gays had just had enough. Whatever kind of however they had been pushed for years before, there was something about that night that said, nope.
Yep.
It was kind of like the Lawrence thing, to where you say it's a perfect mix of situations that brought about that legal case that night. And some of it's misattributed, I think, to Judy Garland dying the week before.
Oh, she did.
June 22nd. So they said the gays were very tense. But I think the times were changing. People had seen hippies, and they had feminist movement and black rights movement and all that kind of stuff. And I think the gays were like,
Yeah.
It's our turn.
Yeah, it's interesting how, kind of an entire group can just individually at the same time, they just collectively get fed up. And it's like, fuck this. We're not going to pay off these cops. And I would assume a lot of these cops did it just for the payoffs, right? Like, they were like, okay, let's raid a gay bar to make some extra money tonight.
Yeah, because what gay person in 1969 wants their life would be ruined to be in the newspaper. And also the mafia-owned bar would extort the people there. Like, we've seen you in our bar, pay us money or else we're going to tell people. Like, they're just trying to be around people. There was no Grindr back then.
But even so, just on that though, go back to 2009. The whole aspect of I saw you in a gay bar. There used to be. I remember I think it was at JR's in 2008, 9. No photography.
Yeah.
Which how would we have gotten along now
without
without?
Well, in 2006, I had my disposable camera that you crank, and friends and I had gone to JR's for the first time. JR's sponsoring. Just kidding. And I took a picture, and the manager swooped up out of the rafters, basically dropped down from the ceiling, and said, "No pictures here." And I asked why, and he said because a lot of people don't want it to be known that they're here.
Yeah.
And it was the same. New Orleans is where I had moved from, and it was the same thing there as open and liberal as New Orleans is. It's kind of like, this is our safe space. You don't.
Yeah.
Right.
And this is in the 2000s.
When people still were now. I mean, it was still not as widely accepted as it is now. But I mean, I can't imagine in 1969, like you said, you didn't want to be. So the mob had a lot.
Oh yeah, detrimental. Yeah.
So the gays pushed the police back, which pissed them off even more because they were like,
started losing power.
We're in control here, and a bunch of fairies are gonna.
Yeah.
Not
listen to us. Yeah.
No, so they became even more brutal. And arrested almost anybody. At that time, people from other bars and from the area on Christopher Street started coming out of their homes and bars, and it was like 500. It was estimated to be between 500 and 1,000 people out on the streets.
Wow.
So, and the next night, too, after all of that, they came out and kind of the same thing happened. But there was no turning back from then.
Yeah. Have you been to Stonewall, Tony?
I've actually not been to the Stonewall Inn.
No.
I go every time I'm in New York. I call it the pilgrimage.
Yeah.
Nice.
We went there. That was fun when we went, and then I took Spencer. I took him to New York City for his first time, and that was a destination. So if you find Spencer on Facebook, you see his smiling mug in front of Stonewall. So
one of the times we went, the bartender was there that night.
Tree?
And
the original bartender who was working.
Well, no, he was just at the club, but now he was a bartender.
Was he working? I thought he was working there. I don't know.
Oh, maybe he was. But he gladly told the story, and it was fascinating. I mean, the bar looks completely different. It closed down a bit, I think, a nail salon and a restaurant after Stonewall.
Oh, okay.
So it was turned back into Stonewall later. And the space was a lot smaller because they no longer owned the place next door. So it looked completely different, but it just the sense of being in a place of such history is fascinating to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's he told that story, which was really cool to kind of hear what happened that night. And again, he told it very matter of factly. That's why I'm like, if the bartender from JR's was still there, like that would be an amazing story to hear.
It's kind of interesting. I don't know if you've seen. There's a meme going around Facebook that. Because a lot of guys in their dating profile are like, masculine only, stuff like that. And it's like, the reason we have the rights we do is because of, like, drag queens and shit. Because they were, like, taking off my fucking heel and I'm going to, jab
first
this
of all,
cop.
In the year 2019, how brave do you have to be to put on a wig and a dress when you're obviously a man with hairy legs and, and walk down the street? Is there anything braver in terms of society?
Yeah. In 2019, let alone in 1969.
Yeah. Yeah, and now they have nothing really to lose. I mean, are you going to lose your job?
Yeah.
Good luck.
No, they do.
But back then, it's like everything is on the line.
Right. I mean, now they have. Houston had a red dress run recently, and they had. I mean, it was not. I didn't see it on any of the gay sites as being a gay event. It was like
it's
straight people.
Yeah.
So
and New Orleans has a huge red dress run, and it's definitely not like majority gay.
Right.
It's
it's Tree, by the way, I was just looking it up. He's still alive and still taking fun photos. I mean, the guy's in his 70s, I think, still looking pretty good. So, and they again told a vibrant story when we were there. So, that was quite an event to happen, and I mean, I think it gets attributed as being the start, but there had been a lot of movement in terms of gay rights. It was just, that was, I guess, the tipping
all the
point.
major New York newspapers at the time covered it that night, and the next day, my favorite headline was "The Queen Bees are stinging mad."
Actually, I did watch a documentary once about Stonewall, and there was this guy that was kind of in the back end of the bar when this all started happening. He thought. And he was, he was being interviewed for the documentary, and he was kind of a little queenie, and he said when it all started, he thought, oh shit, here we go again, and then stuff started getting tense or whatever, and then by the time the fight had gotten to where he was, he's like, I just started fighting. He goes, for the first time in my life, I felt like a man. I felt like a real man for the first time because he was thrown down with the cops, and he's like, fuck you, you're not gonna.
I think all the stories because I read so many stories researching this. About how the gays were making jokes and how they were being disobedient to the cops, but they were making jokes and they were taunting and they were like dancing and all that. So typical of how, to me, gays deal with stuff in a very good way.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, this is normal for us.
There's a line from Will and Grace that they get hit, and they're like, "Oh, you get hit in the head," like, and it's always like you shrug your shoulder and say, "All in a day." And so that's what and it happened a couple of times in that episode. They hit Jack in the head, and he kind of looked around, and then he shrugged his shoulders and said, "Meh, all in a day." And then later, Taye Diggs, is that his name? The actor, he gets hit in the head, and he goes, "Meh, all in a day."
With
So,
a bottle, yeah.
Just that's part of life, and
that probably
as a
did
gay
make
man.
the cops mad. 'Cause it's just like when you're a kid, right? Like if your mom's pissed at you, if you laugh, it makes her twice as mad, right?
Well, see, this is why I think the gays are known for such a biting sense of humor, because you're picked on a lot, okay?
Yeah.
And let me speak for myself. You're picked on by these people that think they're big, macho, straight, trying to impress the girls. So you're not going to fight them back. So you come up with like a little comment that can completely destroy their masculinity and their fragile ego, and they don't mess with you anymore.
Is that because you think you're, if you're a closeted gay, as a kid, you're scared of anything like of being noticed, because if you're being noticed, then someone's going to call you gay, right? So then you become more quiet and you're just observing everyone's behavior.
Well, that was me.
Right?
That was my MO.
So then you can read that person for filth because you've watched them do all the stupidest things they do, just kind of in the quiet, in the corner, and then all of a sudden they come and attack you, and you're like, boom, and you bring them
It's
down
like a
to,
skill that you hone.
Yeah. Yes, the gays are good at that. I mean, but that was 50 years ago, huh? Stonewall.
Yep, 50 years ago this month.
Wow. So, Tony, you need to put that on your to-do list. So we're thankful for those guys, what they did for us. I mean, they allowed us to what has now become this great gay pride celebration. So
Yes.
the year after, there was a movement to kind of remember that event. And so what happened is, the gay people basically discovered their potential strength and gained a new pride since that Stonewall event in 1969. So on June 28, 1970, they held what became known as the first Gay Pride Parade. So a little bit about the background here. Soon after 1969, the Stonewall event, 4 activists came together with an idea. So you had Craig Rodwell, Fred Sargent, Linda Rhodes, and Ellen Brody, which I mentioned that because it wasn't just men. It was two guys and 2 gay men and 2 lesbians came together with this idea. They attended this homophile conference. So they attended the Eastern Regional
Back
Conference.
then we were homophiles.
Yes. Eastern Regional Conference of Homophile
Still
Organization. And proposed that the homophile pickets that they'd have every 4th of July in Philadelphia at Independence Hall that they'd been having for the previous 5 years, that instead of doing that, they replaced that event for a march in New York City. So their plan was a 51-block march to be held on the 1-year anniversary of the Stonewall event. And so you had gays and lesbians we're going to come together to again remember the Stonewall events. Their purpose was to they figured instead of doing kind of these one-off like local events, if you had this big march in New York City, you'd have a greater reach to the number of people, and you'd encompass the ideas and the larger struggle the community was having. So if you brought thousands of people together, that would be a very visible sign to outsiders as well as to the people in the community saying, we're here, we're queer.
It almost sounds too like it was like a celebration versus a protest. Like let's celebrate pride versus protest this homophile. Yeah.
Right.
Well, it took bravery, too, to get out there and be in public.
Oh,
There
yeah.
were all these laws that could basically alter your entire life just for being gay in
Yeah.
public. It was a big deal.
Right. Yeah, and so at the time they called it the Christopher Street Liberation Day, that they held on June 28th, and again it would eventually become known as the first Gay Pride Parade. A little bit about the kind of what was recorded that day. The New York Times reported on it. They said from Washington, Boston, and Cleveland, from Ivy League colleges, from Harlem, the East Side, and the suburbs, they gathered to protest laws that make homosexual acts between consenting adults illegal and social conditions that often make it impossible for them to display affection in public, maintain jobs, or rent apartments, right? So all the things that we just talked about. This was really a celebration. You had the feelings from participants. I mean, they noted, we're different. This is a time to note that we're different, but we're not inferior. And one guy noted, hey, you were probably, because at this time, remember the late 60s, you had the blacks and women fighting for their rights as well. They said, hey, we're a persecuted minority group, and we've got to be out here to demonstrate that we are entitled to the same freedoms and civil rights as everyone else, and we don't need to be in the closet anymore. The way the day unfolded, the group gathered in Greenwich Village and Sheridan Square and marched up Avenue of the Americas. Again, this is in New York City. And they marched up to Central Park, where they had a gay inn in Sheep Meadow there at the park. The marchers they held bright red, green, purple, and yellow silk banners. They were chanting, "Say it loud, gay is proud." And the group sat together in the park once they kind of met the end of the march. And they together just laughing, kikiing it up, waving their banners. And, we had a lot of people looking on to the event. In terms of the numbers, there's the estimates vary. The police officers, they said there was probably over 1,000. The organizers, their estimates vary as well, ranging from 3,000 to 20,000 folks.
Jeez, that's a huge.
Yeah.
But I saw on a documentary, footage of that, and it looked very, very well attended, like thousands of people.
Yeah, you had people marching again from all over the country, and you had a bunch of onlookers. Folks were taking pictures, others kind of tittering on the side. A lot of people obviously startled because you had this big demonstration, this march of gay people, which was totally uncommon.
Yeah.
For that time. Now it's pride events all over the world, attended by hundreds of thousands of folks. But you had, interestingly, and this tells you the character of New York City, little open animosity that was demonstrated.
Oh, that's good.
Some bystanders were applauding, and there was one girl that was noted that really got a round of applause because she was carrying a sign that said, "I'm a lesbian," and so folks were kind of cheering that on. Interesting facts. The four folks that organized this event, they didn't expect it to be that big. So the fact that thousands of people, they were very pleased and kind of overwhelmed.
Yeah,
with the response.
people were probably just so pent up, like all this pent up frustration for years and years. It's like,
I think there was no turning back after Stonewall. I think people
like
were
the floodgate was open. Yeah.
What's interesting to me is that, so Stonewall, just a year before, the windows were boarded up. It was one of the few gay bars. It was mafia owned. A bouncer looked through a peephole after you knocked on the door to let you in because there was so much secrecy. And then just 1 year later, they're marching in the street. Yeah. Basically saying, "Look at me. Yeah. I'm not going back in the shadows anymore."
Yeah, yeah. On the note of the police, it was reported that the same tactical division of the NYPD that kind of activated the Stonewall riots, they were there at the parade protecting the marchers from violence if any were to occur. So, interesting twist.
And some of them, I'm sure, would have been at the
yes.
Riot. Yes. So, we've come a long way. So now 49 years since that first march. Now, again, gay pride parades all over the world. It's still, there's parts of the world that don't have gay pride. We were talking about Montana. They didn't. There wasn't a large celebration, and even if there is one in Montana, which is in the United States, it's not a big.
Well, there's only 4 people in Montana that are gay.
There are 5 now.
No.
5. Somebody had a baby.
Oh,
well, there were 6, and then you moved here.
Yes,
exactly.
But New York City, for the first time, is hosting a World Pride Parade this year. So so this will be on the 29th, I guess, of July. So
that'll be a party.
That'll be a big event. It's only the second time World Pride has been hosted in North America. The other time was in Toronto. So the Canadians always leading on social rights.
Yes.
There. So
a few years ago, the day gay marriage passed, the Supreme Court decision came out, and it was passed. It was San Francisco Pride, and I happened to be in San Francisco, and it was like crazy. But there were so many people, I didn't even watch the parade. I just sat in a bar.
You're talking when the Supreme Court?
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember that Pride in Houston was off the chain. Like there were so many people. That may have also been the first year that it moved from Montrose to downtown.
Yeah.
I don't know, but it was huge. I just remember it being huge.
Yeah, Pride
Huge.
Parade's always fun. I'm looking forward to this Houston one. It'll be hot. I mean, that's the thing but I guess that's why you have so many half-naked people out and celebrating because it's so friggin' hot.
So I don't know if
The bottom half, hopefully.
like if y'all knew this, when I was involved with like gay politics when I first moved here, over the years that there's been a very contentious debate about leaving it in June or moving it because like Dallas, they do theirs in October because it's nicer weather. I think Atlanta, they do theirs in October because it's nicer weather. And so in Houston, a lot of people are like, why do we do it in June? But some people are like, no, we're honoring history here. We're not going to just move it because of weather.
Yeah, I guess you could argue you could move it to October because that's LGBT History Month. But I mean, I think that there's something. I mean, we're honoring the Stonewall riots, right? At least that's how this.
I do
thing
feel
started.
it is kind of good that we're talking about this, and because I think now Pride has gotten so everybody's just used to having Pride every June, and a lot of people now just think, oh, gay people get their own party, where it's like, no,
Oh yeah, the straight pride parade.
yeah, like we're celebrating, and it's because I remember our friend Robert a couple of years ago, somebody was telling him like, well, you know, like why do gay people get their own pride? Like, you know, straight people don't get any kind of celebration. He's like, you should be thankful that you don't need it.
Right.
You know, and so it's like, it is kind of good to remind people that, okay, this isn't just like, oh, gays want to have a big party. It's, we're celebrating that we used to be like locked in the blacked out bars and couldn't be free in society.
Well, that was one of the topics. So the radio station I listened to on Sirius XM, POTUS Press Pool with Julie Mason. I say that because she gave us a shout out. But the reason I tweeted at her was because her topic, and she's an ally, but the topic was because the straight pride was trending, and she's like, do we still need gay pride if this is the sort of backlash that this is going to cause? We're having straight pride discussions, and obviously
All
there
the
was
more reason.
there was a resounding, we need to still have it. But again, nice on that
To
radio
me, it's
show.
not even a celebration.
She gave
It's
us a
I
shout
will
out.
not be in the closet for you.
Right.
Yeah.
To make you feel better.
Right.
Yeah.
I will not be in the closet, so I'm going to come out in the street. You're going to see me, my little peaceful.
You know, and to me,
act.
that's like without even going back to like the history that we just talked about. That's one thing that pride means to me is, you know, when I go to pride events, in every other aspect of our life, like only certain things are appropriate, right? Like at work, you wear, you know, like slacks and a button down or whatever. And this is the one time, even like if we have full rights and everything, where it's like, if I want to wear the skimpiest rainbow bikini and I'm a hairy man, you know, whatever you want to
We're
do,
getting
like
a preview of Tony's pride outfit. All right.
But it's like
Should've worn it today.
whatever you feel comfortable doing. This is the one environment where I can do this and I'm not going to be judged. You know,
Yeah.
and that's what. Well, this is probably a complete other topic, but
Give it to us.
I hate when like gay people are judgmental because it's like we have been repressed and we've been judged and so it's like, you know, you don't judge other people, just like when gay people are like, oh well, I'm not really a pro transgender, right? And it's like, what are you talking about? Like, you know, that was you 50 years ago.
My theory is oppressed communities are more critical and more judgmental of their own communities because who else are they going to be judgmental about?
Yeah.
You know, if you're gay, who do you have to
Yeah.
say is below you? If you've been told so many years that you're, you know, the bottom of the social ladder, you look at other people and then you talk about were there too femme?
Can we talk about that though? Because one of the quotes from the New York Times article back in 1970 was there was someone that said we're probably the most harassed, persecuted minority group in history. And I know, Kendall, you and I have had this debate as me, Hispanic, you as a gay man, me also gay, but not
A gay angel.
Feeling the
Kendall's
same
also
sort of,
white privilege.
Yes.
Let's not forget.
feeling the same sort of things you did as a kid when you were struggling with your sexuality. Like, we had this debate, like who's the more persecuted. And at the end,
No,
it
we
was
didn't
a-
have
it was
a
a-
who's more.
It's not. It was. I mean, it wasn't a debate, but it was just a discussion we
Oh,
would
yeah.
have, and it wasn't a who's more. It was just like we were relaying our own experiences, and yeah, we would just get. It was a tense conversation because we were all like, "You're not understanding my perspective. I wasn't understanding his perspective." I definitely have a better appreciation for it now. But to that quote, right, the most persecuted minority group, is that something like? I don't know.
I wouldn't say most persecuted. I would not say most.
But the reason I brought this up again is because you just said something that I think again always resonated with me when you would talk about struggling with your homosexuality as a kid, because it was the worst, whether you were black, white, Asian, man, woman.
We could all agree that at least you're not gay.
Right. So, I mean, I do hold some credence with that. But again, to your point, Tony, on the white privilege thing, I'm like, even though you may be a gay white man, I mean, there's commentary about the AIDS crisis, right? It was just like, if it would have been black men, would you have had the same? And actually, the problem, the challenge with the AIDS crisis now, it is affecting Hispanic and black men, but no one really cares about it. And some of the commentary is it's not these affluent white gay men who are struggling and having these.
Well, and one thing that I always feel, even myself, is, like gay, no matter how kind of obvious you are, in a way it's like a little bit hidden, I guess. It's like if you're black, you cannot hide it.
Right.
If you're Hispanic, you cannot hide it. And so I just look at my own life and it's like, yes, I'm gay. And if I was like waving a rainbow flag, my opportunities in life would have been lessened over the years, I'm pretty sure. But, because like there are probably a lot of opportunities that even though I'm gay, I have been afforded because I am a white male. And I feel like I'm just like a very average white male, and so like, especially career wise, I feel like if I was super flamboyant and completely out, my career would have been so limited.
Well, and that goes back to the gay bashing that gays do amongst themselves. It's almost like you're acting too femme. You're gonna get me in trouble, if I'm with you. Or you're giving the gays a bad name because you're acting like a woman.
I think all minority groups do that, right? I mean,
absolutely.
Women, you're too feminist, or Hispanic,
you're
being
too
Latino.
white.
Yeah. I mean, it's all the thing. It's like.
Well, it's like, I mean, I don't know why. He was obviously a very complicated individual, but like Michael Jackson with the skin whitening, it's like, did he not want to be black? Or, I mean, what?
No, here's the thing with that. He had vitiligo. So, and that's the whole reason why he wore the glove. Vitiligo, where if you're black and it starts and you have vitiligo, you start having white spots.
Yeah.
He was humiliated by the white spots on his body, so he bleached his entire skin.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
The same color. And denied it, of course. But I don't think it was because of a racial thing. I mean, that's neither here nor there. I do believe he was a gay man, to bring it back to the gay time.
Yes.
But so here we are, again, 49 years since that first Pride event, our gay Pride March in New York City. I mean, the Pride events have come a long way. I mean, I think they kind of, for a while, and I was reading an article about some of the backlash about the current status of the Pride parades. It's like they've become too mainstream, right?
Sponsored by Bank of America
and Target, which is great that we, those communities are. I mean, I know there's a lot of chatter on Twitter about, these companies are, trying to cash in, right?
Well, it goes back to the big debate among the gay community of we want all the same rights, but then there's a whole discussion of, but we don't want to be like you.
Well, it's kind of interesting too, because this, not only the time of year, but in Houston, the Pride celebration and Pride Parade used to be in Montrose. And when it moved to downtown, there were very mixed feelings because some people were like, Montrose is our home. It's our community. It needs to be in Montrose. And a lot of people were like, every other major parade is downtown and we're in Montrose. Like, this kind of legitimizes us. But then people are like, well, no, any Joe Schmo can go to it. Like, when it's in Montrose, it's more homey, only gay people. So there's...
Yeah, but I mean, so it's like, again, do we want to be accepted or do we? Because again, some of the chatter now is like the Pride parades are too mainstream, whereas maybe in the 80s and 90s, you had people that were half naked, and you still have those, but you have it's not as many, and you have a lot of allies now marching. In the
and
Pride
the news would
well.
When I was growing up, on any, not just Fox News, any news channel, if they talked about gays, it would typically be a guy in a Speedo on rollerblades.
Yep.
Yeah. Or two people making out in
the
a park or something.
The YMCA, what are the
Village People.
Village People outfits,
And so I guess that's one kind of plus, I guess, about having it downtown where you do have more allies, and they have family events now, so they have rainbow on the green. But it's, I don't know. So, like, as I said, I like Pride because if you do want to wear, like, a bikini and you're a man, it's like rainbow bikini, you're a man, it's fine. But it's also nice that I guess percentage wise, there's less of that, and so you can bring your kids there. And
But I think the people that know that are going there, the allies that are going there, they are not there, and that they're taking their kids.
Yeah.
They know what they're going to see, right?
Yeah,
and
the thing
that's
is,
part of what they're trying to
and
expose.
everything is, if they were indecent, like if they had nothing on,
Right.
they would. It's not legal, right?
Right.
And so, who cares if they want to wear like a skimpiest bikini ever?
Which I love allied parents who are taking their younger kids to these events because they're showing them culture, right? I mean,
Yep.
part of the LGBT culture, which I think is, to me, I always get like teared up because I'm like, oh, this is progress, right? That you're seeing not just gay people but straight people start to appreciate the culture. I mean, there's probably more allies in the Houston Pride Parade in terms of all these big companies marching than there are gay people. I mean, I think about like all the maybe it's a slight exaggeration, but there's big corporations. All the major oil and gas companies that are here, they've all got their LGBT, their pride organizations marching in those things. So, and it's not just. It's the big consulting firms too. It's KPMG, AIG and whatnot, Deloitte, all those, as well as ExxonMobil, Shell, BP.
Yeah.
So and there's a lot.
A lot of the banks like Chase
before companies wanted nothing to do with gay people because that would hurt their brand.
That's happened within the last 5 years, though. I mean, I think.
Well, we've talked about 3 topics that have greatly advanced gay rights, gay whatever. And now it seems like in 2019, we've almost, because we take it for granted so much to where we say, we don't want straight girls in our bar. Or we don't think you should get married because that's not our lifestyle to live that straight life,
Yeah.
Or we don't want banks and huge corporations to sponsor our gay pride parade because that's not how our gay pride used to be. So it's this kind of like tension between, yes, we want all the rights, yet it's changing the culture.
Well, yeah, because we've
a lot of minority groups, though.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
and we've talked
Every
about that
minority
before,
group.
where it's like, it's nice that now we can go to any bar and people can be affectionate and stuff like that, and it's like you're not going to be that discriminated against. But then the result is, well, now there's like 3 gay bars in Montrose where there used to be like 15.
Yeah, and the just 2 years ago, 2017, we went to Hamburger Mary's here in Houston, Kendall and I, on Easter Sunday, right? We went to brunch in the area. We were okay, let's walk, see what's going on in the bars. We go to Hamburger Mary's. Well, we weren't intentionally going to Hamburger Mary's, but Kendall says, that sounds like Lady Bunny. And I'm like, there's no way Lady Bunny's going to be in Houston without a lot of press.
Yeah.
And on Easter Sunday, sure enough, we walk in there. It's Lady Bunny.
And we got a table.
We got a table open. There were many tables open. It was not crowded at all. Fast forward, here we are in 2019. Spencer and I are trying to go on a Saturday afternoon to go see a drag show. It's
sold out,
crowded, and it's all women. It's all straight women. Bachelorette parties. And
which is a little bit annoying though, because it's almost like not because
novelty.
It's straight women. It's because let's go look at the freaks. A little bit of an aspect.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's the freaks. I mean, I think RuPaul's Drag Race has made that a mainstream item so that people like drag. I mean, you've got straight women. I mean, there was a little backlash a year or two ago where straight women were dressing as drag, right? And so they're like, oh, they're appropriating gay culture, which is great because drag queens are basically
appropriate. That's the definition of appropriation.
But anyway, so it was that was interesting. But what I do like to see, though, I don't mind giving up tables. I don't like giving up tables, but I don't mind seeing space filled with families of young LGBT. You've got some like an 18-year-old lesbian or a 19-year-old gay boy taking their families for their birthday, right? So their parents are there, aunts and uncles, grandmas there, and they're all celebrating their child. I don't mind. I mean, commercialization. I mean, those things aren't fun. The mainstreamness, but when you can have kids that are coming out with their families and it's being embraced, I'm all for it. I'm glad of the progress.
Yep.
So, any other parting thoughts on terms of the Pride Parade? All right. Well, I think we've kikied well enough. I love
well
the
into
topics.
the night.
Yeah, it's almost dark now.
We need to do evening podcasts because then we're not as long-winded.
When we record on Fridays, it's in the end of the work week. We're tired. It's and now we're like
Saturday brunch. We're like,
we go long.
Let's go all day.
It's like a brunch. That's why we do it.
Because we're gonna just sit here and talk and drink anyways.
Yeah, we started doing that. That's what we're gonna do when we turn off the mic. So, all right. Well, it's a great event or great discussion. I guess just a reminder to follow us. or listen to our podcast in terms of all where you download your podcasts, iTunes, Google Podcasts, you name it. You can also follow us on our website at letstalkaboutgaystuff.com. You can follow us on social media as well. So Instagram, Facebook at Let's Talk About Gay Stuff, and on Twitter we are at Talk Gay Stuff. And yeah, don't forget to listen to our sister podcast, Our Spoopy Podcast, who with Chris and Spencer, who are regularly putting out the giggles with the spoopy stuff. So
Yes.
all right, we're here.
We're queer.
Get used to it.